They are the restaurants that we cherish and hold a special place in our hearts, where warm and welcoming staff greet us with a smile and make us feel like cherished guests. These are the establishments that whisk us away on a culinary adventure, and no detail is overlooked in offering extraordinary dining experiences. It is where we choose to toast our achievements and celebrate milestones with our loved ones. They are the distinguished restaurants of North America, and every DiRōNA has a story. Meet Ted Balestreri, one of North America's most celebrated and successful restaurateurs. Ted began his illustrious career opening the Sardine Factory restaurant with his close friend, Chef Bert Catino, in October 1968. This fine dining establishment in Monterey, California, is renowned worldwide for its exceptional service and boasts one of America's most curated wine collections. Ted's efforts in revitalizing Monterey's waterfront have transformed the area into the famous Cannery Row, attracting over 4 million tourists annually. Ted serves on numerous boards, including the National Restaurant Association Education Fund, and his philanthropy is unmatched, notably through his annual Ted J. Balestreri Golf Classic, which supports various causes. Joining me today on another episode of Every DiRōNA Has a Story is renowned restaurateur and an incredible advocate for tourism and so many things in Monterey, California. Ted Balestreri, thank you for joining me on this episode.
Thank you, Scott. Pleasure to be here.
Now, you and I could spend hours here today touching on so many great things. And your history in Monterey, California, the Sardine Factory, renowned DiRōNA-awarded restaurant. But a lot of people may not know your background. You were born in New York, where many would think you were born in Monterey. Tell me about your history and how you ended up coming to Monterey.
Well, Scott, I came from a quaint little town in New York called Brooklyn. You might have heard of it. But you can't make fun of me anymore, Scott. It's awfully she now. Brooklyn's becoming very she. And I lived there for quite some time. And my dad died when I was a teenager. And they read the will. And he left me the whole world to make a living in, so I wasn't encumbered. But he did leave me a wristwatch and a Pontiac that was paid up. So my sister, my mother, basically, we came to California where my aunt and uncles, we were already out there back and forth. So we came out there permanently to stay with my aunt and uncle in Carmel. Now, it was like a cultural shock, from New York to Carmel, but I enjoyed it very much. My senior year in Carmel High, it was another Ted by the name of Ted Smith and Ted Balestreri. We became good friends. We were very popular in our senior class, which made it fun. And then from there, Carmel High went to MPC for a couple of years, got drafted in the Army, and out of about 30,000 people at Fort Ord, they sent about 22 of us to the Leadership Academy at the Presidio. We got out of that, and we got back to Fort Ord, and I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and this was the beginning of Vietnam, 61, 60. They called it Indochina. And what saved my butt was the Cuban crisis broke out, and everything froze. Between going to the Leadership Academy, my time was running out in the draft, and I got out. And just a little bit after I got out, they escalated the war, and I was probably one of the luckiest guys in the world. Went back to Lewis Hotel Management School, graduated. But before that, I worked at a lot of restaurants here in Monterey. The hotel we own now, I was actually a dishwasher, busboy. So to make a long story short, I got out of there and graduated. I took over a lot of restaurants. I became one of the managers of the Islands, a Polynesian restaurant in Arizona. I had 12 waiters or something. I left, I had like 22. I took over the Marco Polo, a hotel in Visalia, and increased the business. And I came back here and took over the Road, which was been doing very well on the waterfront. Became the #1 grossing restaurant on the waterfront. So here I am doing all these things for so many people. I figured it's time to do it for myself. Meanwhile, Bert and myself went to college together, and we were roommates, and we had a good time, and we always wanted our own place. So, but maybe it was time. So anyway, to make a long story short, there was an old condemned building on the wrong side of the track, where the Sardine Factory is now. It was a cafeteria for the cannery workers. Then it was a ballet studio. So what happened is each cannery had a different whistle. And they would have lunch, and when a whistle would blow, that group would go. Another whistle would blow, that group would go. They didn't want to hold up these assembly lines, so they fed them right there on Cannery Row. Well, to make a long story short, that was an old, practically condemned building. The only thing I could afford at the time when I was looking for a restaurant. Meanwhile, a lot of people, said no, but I had a dentist that had faith in us. And he was Dr. Caselli, a wonderful guy. And he put up the money for the restaurant, and I negotiated to get this thing. And then Bert left Cerritos, and he worked with the fellow I was working for, Art Bodine, which was a wonderful man. I hated to leave him. And he looked at my building and looked at me and said, Ted, if you ever want to come back, your job's always open. We want you. I said the other way around. I said, if you ever need help, I'm here for you. I loved the guy. He was all my bosses were good. I loved him. And anyway, to make a long story short, we hit big, really big. And then what happened was we had a fire not too long. There were some people didn't want us successful. And they came in, they cut up the paintings and stuff, and we had a fire. And that got everybody a little nervous, our partner. So to make a long story short, he had a lawyer that recommended he ought to get out because we're going to grow. We're going to have another restaurant, the butcher shop in Carmel. He thought we might be growing too fast. So we bought him out. And then I had 4 of the greatest partners in the world, well, the Force Development Company, George Rooney and Harry Davidian, which I met when I was at the Marco Polo. They became terrific friends. I used to play a lot of cards. And I didn't have the money. They'd back me and we'd win. And we became really good friends. So when I came over here, I offered them a piece of the action at the Sardine Factory. We looking for partners. They looked at that building. They thought this time I went too far. It was so ugly looking from the outside. When it was so big, they said they'll never make that mistake again. So we became partners in a butcher shop. We started buying up real estate and shopping centers, and it couldn't be any nicer. We did so well for them that one day I went out to Visalia. They took me out on a farm. They had overalls. They gave me a farm hat. And I'm out here in the middle of this ranch with nobody out there. I thought it was like Goodfellas. I don't know if I'm going to come back or not, All of a sudden, they gave me the deed of the ranch, 80 acres. Thank you for being such a great partner for Bert and myself. And that's the kind of partners. I mean, I loved them. It couldn't be any nicer. So that's how I came west, and that's where I stayed.
So 1958, the Sardine Factory. Did you open up as a fine dining restaurant, or did it evolve over time into the fine dining restaurant it is today?
Matter of fact, it's the opposite, Scott. It was a fine dining restaurant, small. It was only 72. October 2nd, 1968. We only had about $960 to our name. And after we had a bad day, we had trouble. And we had things like an old milk truck in the back of the restaurant. Had no tires. We needed the refrigeration. And so we hooked that up to the restaurant. And everything was patch and match. We had a decorator. It was wonderful. He knew we didn't have money to decorate, so he painted all the walls gray so you couldn't see all the chips. And it painted all these beautiful red paintings and frame paintings. Actually, he was like a Hollywood design person. So we hit the right guy at the right time. and everything we got was used. So anyway, to make a long story short, October 2nd, 1968, we flip on the lights. We always had a chef, and Bert was running the kitchen. I was front manager and maitre d'. And all of a sudden, we flip on the lights, and they started to come, and they started to come. It was like they discovered a little place on the wrong side of the tracks, and it hit big, and we started. It was fine dining, white jackets on the waiters, white gloves, and then we expanded another room, the captain's room, and then the conservatory, and then the wine cellar downstairs and upstairs, and we just kept growing and getting big. And we had all tucks and white gloves and this. For 35 years, Scott, we had to have a shirt and tie.
Right.
35. Then the next 10 years, just like you're dressed now, very nicely dressed, no holes in the jeans and no hats. 10 years. So that was 45 years. The last 10 years, Scott, if you're breathing, we take you. If you're breathing. So in other words, everybody comes in now, they might come in with a Ferrari, they have holes in their jeans and they got a hat this way. They got a lot of money and they get very upset if you tell them to take the hat off. But we do keep the wine cellar in certain areas very formal, like the old days. But to keep up with the times, the casualization of America, I don't know, Scott, maybe you could tell me, when did America lose the civility? I mean, when you would come in, Scott, I would allow it 2 hours for dinner. Now they want to come in and get in and out in an hour and 10 minutes. They're on their iPhones. Fine dining, as I knew it and loved it, and was raised with it and worked with it, it's kind of petered out a little bit. Not downstairs in the wine cellar, a few other places. The wine cellar is still one of the few places in the world, and maybe the only, that matches the music, food, and wine all in concert. Now my partner will make a special menu or something, and we all go out of our way down there. And we start off with, say, like Vivaldi, and as the sauces get heavier, we go into Beethoven or Bach. It's a real heavy sauce. It's Wagner, and we announce each piece. That's the way I dream fine dining should be.
The wine cellar, let's touch on that for a minute. 55 plus years, you've accumulated quite a collection. Did you intend for it to get as large as it is and as renowned as it is? I mean, you're written up nationally and internationally as having one of the greatest wine cellars of any restaurant. Did it start out that way, or is it just over time you've just added to it?
We're probably about third in the country. I think the number one is Burns Steakhouse in Florida, and maybe the Forge in Miami, then us. And Burns has like a warehouse the size of our restaurant full of wines, but ours is a fabulous wine list. I give a lot of credit to Fred Dave. He was our master sommelier, and Fred had really a great palate and loved wine. And we sent him to France to take the test, the sommelier, the master sommelier, and he scored the all-time high score and brought back the crew cup to Monterey. And I said, that really put us on the map with wines. And we started making a passion of collecting great wines and selling great wines. And then we decided to do something that we thought was going to be a great contribution to American wines. We sent Fred to paid for the whole Guild of Sommeliers to come over here and to start a Guild of Sommeliers master test here. And the first one was given at the Sardine Factory. And we had these guys from all over restaurants, 21, all the company, all over the United States to take it. I made a big mistake. They failed everybody but one. Guys were crying and saying, Mr. Jones, he passed the first section. I figured, one, how many restaurants we have in America? We can't live long enough to have that many master sommeliers. I think they only still got 75 or 80. But what came out of that was different courses now. Psalm 1, Psalm 2, Psalm 3. And that's plenty of knowledge to become a great sommelier for the restaurants. And that's what took off. And Fred Dane has a lot to do with that. he was a true leader, a pioneer.
Yeah, and definitely a pioneer for those studying wine worldwide. Even it's incredible what his time did. So at some point, you stepped outside the restaurant, and the community of Monterey became important to you. I'll even call it a resurrection of buildings and waterfront. How did you choose the real estate side of things, and how were you introduced to that after opening the restaurant?
Well, you got to remember, we had the Sardine Factory, then we opened up the butcher shop that hit. We paid for it 1 year, and then we took over the Rogue restaurant, San Simeon restaurant with them. Now we're making a lot of money. But the real estate, we saw all this real estate on the waterfront decay. It was all canneries on Cannery Row. You wouldn't go down there on your best day without a bulletproof vest. And, all of a sudden, we started buying it up and a fellow by the name of Ben Swig, he owned the Fairmont Hotel. Wonderful, wonderful man. So I decided to go up to visit him one day to buy the building next door to us, which is the whaling station, which he owned. And he took a liking to me like a kid, And he took me to his office, and I negotiated a deal with him. I think it was $72,000 at the time for that building. And then he took me to lunch downstairs, and he wrote the price on the napkin. And then he took me downstairs to the square room. We had lunch together, and he says, "Okay, here's the price." I said, "Mr. Swig, I think you're off a little bit." He said, "What do you mean I'm off?" Like, now I'm getting scared. I said, "Whatever that price you wrote on the menu, I'll pay." And sure enough, he was honest. He came back, he charged me that price. And we built this kind of little relationship up. And as years went on, I went back and went back. And finally, he sold us all Cannery Row. He had two sons, Mel and Dick, were both nice boys on both sides. But he was the boss. Every time I go up there, I negotiate with him. He liked the bantering.
So, and now let's take it to 2024. Your company, I think, occupies, is it 82% of Monterey?
It's the number one destination, Central California. We do about 6 million people a year.
Incredible.
And we got we run 5-6 hotels now. It's really become the aquariums down there at the end of Cannery Row now. We got another hotel that was just approved. It's what you call the American dream, Scott. Only in America. My dad died. He left me the whole world to make a living, but he left me in the greatest country in the world. And that's all you need as an inheritance.
It's incredibly special what you've...
My partner worked hard too. Bert was very hard, and we put in a lot of hours together over the years to try to make that restaurant what it is today. And even though it's a small part of our company now, it's a ship that launched 1,000 ships.
No doubt, and it still is such a staple to the Monterey area and community, and to the restaurant industry. Now, you had a passion for golf that came along the way, and I know you've had some involvement in some of the golf courses there that are so close to you.
I became president of National Restaurant back in '84 and '85. And we always had golf tournaments. Marriott had one. I have one out here. Now, this is my 31st year. I think we raised over $30 million for charities now for the kids. And this year, we brought in about 2.7 million. And had some of them, and it's a waiting list to come out to play on it. And we play Pebble. We take Pebble for the whole day. We buy it out. So after the tournament, you go back and play. We play Spyglass, and then we rotate the third golf course, Monterey Peninsula Country Club, Tehama, or one of the places. So it's been a great success for the hospitality industry, for the restaurateurs, for the purveyors, especially for the kids who need it the most.
Right, and that's what's so special about the Education Foundation. Many years ago, you began with DiRōNA our scholarships through an endowment. But let's take that back a step. You must remember 1990, and there you were with the other greats, John Arena, Bert Coutinho, obviously, the Knowles family from New Jersey. the Holiday Award at that time, I guess, was purchased by Reader's Digest. And the group of you, I think there was 10 of you, came up with the idea for DiRōNA.
Well, the Holiday Awards started way back with Ella Brenner and quite a few of the guys. And it was wonderful, you know, all the top restaurateurs and ladies would meet together every year. It was truly an elite group of fine dining. And then when Robert Balzer at the time was the head of it. Then DiRōNA came along and I did the commercials for American Express. Do you know me at that time? And all that stuff and I had a good relationship with American Express. And they sponsored us a $2 million for the DiRōNA to get it off the ground. And it became very successful. It was like the Holiday Awards and growing. And it was something I think we need now more than ever before, Scott, to just keep that fine dining alive in America, that experience in life. You know, we have a saying at the Sardine Factory: we made you feel at home, we made $1 million mistake. Our job is to make you feel better at home, or why would you go out? And that's the key of fine dining, to make people feel special. And DiRōNA is very important to keep that fine dining alive and give the restaurants, encourage one another to keep that high standard of dining. And DiRōNA, I think, certainly is that vehicle for us right now.
Well, we are grateful. We're now, Kelly and I are 8 years at the helm of DiRōNA. We are grateful for your continued support, and Bert as well. I think you're completely right that now is the time more than ever. As you're saying, you know, the hours that those may have spent inside restaurants for fine dining is diminished and reduced. People are busier, you know, more now than ever before. The 2-3 hour lunch with a cigar following it, those days may be gone, but there is still such a demand for quality. And I think the word is experience. And I think that's been a big part of what led Bert and you to such success. The Sardine Factory brought an experience to a dining meal, to a dinner or a lunch. And I think that's why it's important for DiRōNA to continue carrying on the torch, and continue leading restaurants and making sure patrons know where to go for these special moments in life. So we are grateful.
We never advertise home cooked meals. If we can't do better than that, we're in trouble. We need civility. Where do we lose civility, Scott? Somewhere along the line, when do people, I don't know what happened. They come in with baseball caps to the side, the back. You take them, we don't allow hats here on. They get hot. They want to start a fight. So now we try to make them as happy as they could, no matter what they have. And but I miss those very white glove formal days. I really do. That's why we keep it alive at the wine cellar.
Yeah, and it's such a special room. We were there for Fred Dame's Hall of Fame induction not too many years ago. I think right at the beginning of COVID with you. That was
he's the best. Freddie's the best.
Right. Tell us a little bit about, and everybody in the restaurant industry, when families achieve such success as Bert and you have with the Sardine Factory. Tell us a little bit about succession. It's always a question everybody has for restaurateurs, and I know many watching this as well. You are hard at work every day, and I can see you there in the conference room. But how does one, building such a great empire and such a renowned restaurant that as you said sailed the ship, what happens? What is the next stage for a company like yours?
Well, first of all, I had all great partners, great families at the time, but we have so many companies now. And the hotel and the hospitality end, my oldest son, Teddy, he's a member of the National Restaurant. He was president of California Restaurant, but he loves the hospitality business. Matter of fact, this year, when things were rough in California, he's up 27% for 3 months already at the factory. So I give him a lot of credit. Certainly Bert and him work together. Bert's constantly working with the chef. We got a wonderful chef there. He does a great job, but certainly Bert's always working, trying to come up with new dishes and keep people excited. But you got to recognize them. The most important thing in the world is when you come in, it's psychic reward. Scott, how are you? We miss you. You want your usual taste, Scott? Right this way, That's the most psychic reward is the most cheapest thing and the most important thing in a restaurant. Recognition, and so I got my other son. He's taking over all the real estate, the development. He's a builder at a trade. So, and they work very well together. And one of Bert's sons are very close to him. They all seem to get along real well. So I don't think there's going to be a problem.
Wonderful. Well,
and the only reason I'm doing well, I'm self-inflicted. I was going to retire 20 years ago, 10 years ago. But when you love what you do, you don't work.
Very true.
You know what the word win means? What's important now? W-I-N. Don't worry about yesterday. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Take care of each day.
Well, special words. Ted, on behalf of Kelly and I, we cannot thank you enough. Your continued support at DiRōNA is so valuable. The knowledge and experience that you have and you've passed on down to us. We were introduced together by somebody that we both cherish, you and I, John Arena. We've lost him just over a year ago, but always grateful that he made the introduction for you and I and for Ted and I as well. So from Kelly and I, thank you for your continued support and your time.
I was just a stepping stone with so many great leaders like John. We go on. If I start mentioning, I'll know I'll forget somebody. But all those great independent operators, they were the foundation of what we all are about today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Keep up the good work, buddy.
Thank you. Everyone, another wonderful episode of Every DiRōNA Has a Story. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.